Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. The King of God, Asgard signed 100 million years. Chapter 41. Hearing Ron's words, Odin's expression finally changed. The person he had been looking for was Ron. It's just that Ron is too low-key. Odin never thought that someone with that kind of ability would go to logistics and brewing. Enough, Odin roared. Don't let Ron go any further. After all, Ron knew about Hela, and if Thor knew about it, it would be troublesome. But fortunately, although he didn't know what his intention was, Ron didn't say Hela's name after all. Others, however, started talking. What? He was responsible for the rebellion back then. There's also Ragnarok. I saw the eternal fire and it burned in front of me, and then disappeared in a blink of an eye. It turned out to be Ron's trick. Doesn't that mean he saved us more than once? Yeah, the God King can't take a shot at Ron. Ron turns out to be the invisible patronus of Asgard. Quote. Hearing what everyone said, Odin couldn't help but make a move. He couldn't bear the presence of a man of great prestige in Asgard. Because he knew exactly what would happen, that's how he successfully rebelled back then. Boom! Odin decisively threw the Spear of Eternity. It was one of Odin's handiest weapons, and it turned into a bolt of lightning, which slashed towards Ron. This was the first time Ron had faced the Spear of Eternity. Although I have seen Odin use it against many opponents, it was as if the Eternal Spear had locked onto his aura directly. Give him a feeling that he can't escape no matter what. Even if you dodge, you will be caught up. So, Ron simply didn't hide. Definitely, because of the special attributes of the Eternal Spear, even though he really wanted to see who was stronger, he was still not stupid enough to directly fight with his body. Sizzle. Everyone saw Ron's eyes turn red, and then a beam of light shot out. Boom. The thunder and lightning collided with the scorching beam like the sun, as if the entire space was shattered. A small space storm frightened the other onlookers to move away. Someone kept saying, "This temperature seems to be higher than the eternal fire." Everyone blushed for a while. Feeling the temperature of this light beam, as if you were right next to the sun, is really shocking. Moreover, the light beam of at the moment has not stopped, and it is in a stalemate with the Spear of Eternity. Finally, boom, with an explosion, the Spear of Eternity flew straight back into Odin's hands. This is the first time Spear of Eternity has not dealt damage. Moreover, there seems to be a burnt smell on the Spear of Eternity. Odin's expression remained unchanged, but he felt very troubled in his heart. The destroyer armor closed completely, and the others teleported in front of Ron. Boom! The Spear of Eternity was opened by Ron with one hand, and then the other hand touched the destroyer armor. Neither side was harmed, but Odin was in destroyer armor. Even if his body makes him immune to most physical attacks, ordinary attacks can't hurt him at all. But his constitution is still no match for Ron. Whoosh! After that, the speed of the two hit faster and faster, as if they had become two phantoms. Common warriors' eyes couldn't keep up at all. Only Brynhild and the others can barely see clearly. Thor no longer pretended to be dead, and quickly got up from the ground to watch the battle. Ron didn't use any of the artifacts, but Odin found them overwhelming. This is different from the opponents he has encountered before. Odin can only use his own huge Odin power. The power of Odin is transformed into various energies, creating various force fields and attacks, but it is of no use to Ron. It cannot be said that it is useless. Odin could clearly see that Ron would be hurt too. But just leaving a tiny trace, and just for an instant, Ron was self-healing. The super healing of the Superman template allows Ron to recover quickly no matter what the injury is. So, melee, he is not afraid at all. However, the power of Odin used by Odin still made him feel a little pain. But nothing serious. Everyone says that Superman's magic resistance is low, but it's just a joke, it's really stupid. Superman's magic resistance is only lower than physical defense, so there is a saying that magic resistance is not good. But it's definitely not the zero magic resistance that everyone says. Therefore, for Ron, who has been exposed to the yellow sun for nearly 2,000 years, Odin has no threat to him. Clang! Ron sent the destroyer armor flying with a punch. And it can be clearly seen that there is a smashed fist mark on the mask of the destroyer armor. Odin looked at Ron in shock. No one knew better than him how strong the destroyer armor was. Especially under his full urging. This is the equipment that allows him to fight against the gods. Although the destroyer armor quickly repaired itself, it was no less shocking to Odin. The God King can't beat Ron. Ron is too strong. He is the most powerful existence in Asgard. He even defeated the God King in armor with his body. His body is stronger than the armor of a God King. Quote. It was Brynhild and Sif who were shocked. They were raised by Ron alone, so they naturally know that Ron is very strong. But they didn't expect Ron to be so powerful. This is Odin, the king of God of Asgard. He was actually beaten into the air. Actually, it's not that Ron doesn't wear armor, it's that it's not necessary or good. You can't wear a Batman armor, can you? Moreover, Superman has always relied on his own body, so he still needs a battle armor. Who do you look down on? I, in the name of God King Odin, take your life. Odin has no choice but to use the last method. As the king of God's domain, he controls the power of life and death of the Asgard people. In addition to the tyrannical strength, the most important thing is the ability given to him by the power of Odin. The lives of Asgardians can be deprived and resurrected at will, because the life and strength of Asgardians come from the power of Odin. Only, when Odin finished speaking, Ron showed no signs of being deprived of life. That's it, Ron couldn't even feel his body change. The Superman template has long since covered his Asgard body. Otherwise, he might not be able to withstand Odin's move. But it's a pity that there is no if. Odin has no way to take his life. God King Odin fell silent. I propose a truce. How can it be so easy? Ron smiled, hit if he wanted to, and stop if he wanted to. Don't take it too far. Odin snorted coldly. He just didn't want to fight Ron to the death because it would hurt Asgard a lot. I have a request. Ron understood that too, but he wanted enough goodness. He didn't want to fight Odin either. That doesn't make any sense. Not to mention that it is difficult for him to kill Odin now. Even if he can kill him, it will be difficult to achieve his goal. Now Odin just has no ambitions and only wants peace. If it was Odin who was very ambitious, Ron would not necessarily just go with him casually. The mentality is different, which leads to the different strength of Odin. After all, Odin has lived for an unknown number of years. The long life makes Odin's strength a mystery as well. You must not be deceived by him just because of his old appearance. We can discuss, Odin said, and the two disappeared in front of the crowd together. It wasn't until the two disappeared that no one dared to speak. Where did he come from? Many people were unwilling to leave where they were, but Thor and the others quickly fled. Thor felt that these people looked at him differently. Without the usual sense of awe, everyone seemed to think that he was not worthy of inheriting the throne. This feeling made Thor uncomfortable. Loki couldn't stop laughing. Thor was finally taught a lesson. As expected of a superficial brother. As for Brynhild and Sif, they even looked at each other, and they all went back to wait for Ron. Two figures appeared in the Golden Hall. Odin is back on his throne, and it seems like the only way to give him a sense of identity. When his strength can't suppress Ron, he knows it's difficult. The older Odin was the less he wanted to go all out. It's evident from the fact that he didn't take a shot on Karl Nila. Therefore, I only hope to bring peace to the Nine Realms, so that Asgard can rule forever, without suffering from Ragnarok's Odin, and I don't really want to have more twists and turns. Later, when Thor went to Jotunheim, he was so angry that he threw him directly to the earth. If he had been younger, he would have given Lof a good beating. From the changes in these things, you can know Odin's attitude. He is indeed old, not referring to his body, but his mentality. What he thinks now is to prevent Asgard from being destroyed in his hands. So, Odin's eyes gradually focused on Ron. What do you want? Status. Ron's answer is simple. Yes, you will be the main god of Asgard from now on. Odin seemed to accept his fate. Definitely, if Ragnarok does show up, and there is a major crisis in Asgard, you have to stop it. Odin added, not knowing what to think. He had thought Ragnarok was irreversible. But thinking about it now, it is possible to avoid it. Ron naturally nodded in agreement. Odin doesn't say he will, because he wants Asgard whole. Odin certainly couldn't have imagined how ambitious he was. Because Ron has never revealed his thoughts. Seeing Ron's figure disappear, Odin also sighed. Don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Why couldn't he see Ron when he used the time gem before? Frigga appeared behind him and squeezed the space between his brows. It is a good thing that such people exist, at least Asgard will not be destroyed. No, Asgard will exist as long as Thor is alive. Odin retorted. He didn't want Asgard to lose power. Odin wondered if he was dead, who would stop Ron? With the promulgation of Odin's order, Ron's identity suddenly became officially certified by Asgard. This caused an uproar among many Asgard people. Caused a lot of discussion. But Ron returned to his residence as if nothing happened. Supergiant, Brynhild, and Sif are all waiting for him. Teacher, seeing Ron appearing, they all asked worriedly. It's okay, Odin has acknowledged my existence. Ron laughed. Hearing Ron's words, several people relaxed. Both Brynhild and Sif are used to. Ron never called God King Odin, he always called him by his first name. So, just get used to it. You guys have to be careful next time. Ron apologized to Brynhild and Sif. Brynhild quickly said, it's nothing, the big deal is that I quit the Valkyrie army. That's not okay, you're Valkyrie. Ron patted her on the shoulder. Brynhild nodded firmly. Yes, she is Valkyrie. Sif didn't say any more, just shook his fist. When the two left, Ron looked at Supergiant and smiled. It turned out not bad. This is just the first step. Ron wasn't a transparent person in Asgard anymore. When Ragnarok actually comes, and Odin's sons can't solve the disaster, people will think of him. This is the most critical. Karl Nila in Nornheim also got the news immediately. Needless to say, she was surprised. She knew that Ron was very strong, but she didn't expect to be even with Odin. Although Odin looked like a thunderbolt and a raindrop, he didn't use his full strength. But Ron may not have used his full strength. But she knew that Ron was still a powerful mage. Both magic and close combat are very strong, which made Karl Nila envious for a while. Although her constitution belongs to the outstanding among the Asgard people. There are no shortcomings, and she is not afraid of any viruses and poisonous gases. Common physical attacks have very little damage to her. But she couldn't possibly be as powerful as Ron. It's a mystery. It seems, he really has a slight chance of becoming the king of God. I want to know what it's like to be a god queen. As this incident happened, Ron's life in Asgard became more and more unsettled. In particular, God King Odin also changed him to live in the palace next to Asgard. Although Ron doesn't care much about these. But there is the ability to enjoy, definitely to enjoy. So many people came here to look for him, wanting to become stronger. Among them, Amora and Lorelei are the most enthusiastic. Ron also changed his mind and decided to train his cronies in Asgard first. So the two finally met their longing Ron. After giving Supergiant a look, the cloaked Supergiant could only close the door regretfully. Huge amounts of only 3 of them were left in the room. Now Ron's room is bigger than the place where he lived before. Amora and Lorelei suddenly became extremely nervous. They lowered their heads one after another, their eyes constantly rolling around. Head up, Ron said unquestionably to them. Amora lifted it up first, and although she looked cold, she was still a little flushed. Lorelei managed to control her emotions. Look me in the eyes and tell me, what do you want from me? Amora and Lorelei suddenly became blurred. Then said without hesitation, strength, power. I want to learn magic. Amora then added another sentence. Ron snapped his fingers and the two regained consciousness. They all looked at Ron in horror. This is an ability that Ron had signed into but never used. The Eyes of Hell, the favorite ability of Satan, the Lord of Hell. Anyone who looks at these eyes will express their deepest desire without hesitation. Therefore, the two expressed their desires without any hesitation. Ron smiled slightly, the two of them looked scarier than the devil in Amora. Do not be afraid. He pinched their snow-white chins. The eyes of the two couldn't stop flickering, and they didn't dare to look at him at all. Faced with a person who can fight against God King Odin, and has all kinds of weird abilities, why not be afraid? I can give you everything you want. But, then what can you give me? Hearing Ron's words, the two were overjoyed. Lorelei obviously liked power more than her older sister, so she immediately said, I can offer my loyalty. We will never betray you, be a slave or humble. Amora also reacted, and immediately expressed her loyalty. In Asgard, there are not many opportunities to meet someone as strong as Ron. It can be said that there is no one else at all except him. As for Odin, does Odin still need their loyalty? All Asgard are his people. Make a deal. Ron smiled slightly. Successful sign-in, continuous sign-in for 2,900 years, and reward, Contract Godstone. Contract Godstone. The item used by the devil in Legendary to sign a contract with his subordinates, and will obtain the soul and loyalty of the signer. Good stuff. Ron was afraid that he would not be able to control Amora and Lorelei. After all, both of them have great ambitions, and they are not so easy to surrender. But with this thing, Ron immediately called the two to make a contract. The two were hesitant at first, but under Ron's coercion and lure, he quickly chose to offer his soul to the big devil. Seeing that the contract was completed, Ron finally showed a satisfied smile. As for the others, Ron didn't really like it. It's just that in the face of the Amora sisters, such extraordinary means must be used. Only then did he discover that both Supergiant and Amora sisters can easily control others. If all he needs are puppets, he can easily master Asgard. Soon, Ron looked forward to another day. Another super god lottery. This means that he has been in this world for more than 3,000 years. Asgard hasn't changed much over the years, and it's still brilliant. And 1,000 years ago he obtained the Fountain of Youth, this time he is full of expectations. Successful sign-in, continuous sign-in for 3,000 years, this sign-in is a super magic lottery, there is no bonus for the first achievement, and the reward, the gate of space. The door to space, behind the door will be another world. A virtual portal suddenly appeared in front of Ron. Its name and profile are also extremely simple. But Ron was shocked. If you guessed right, after this door, it leads to another brand new world, not other Marvel universes. However, Ron found that he couldn't push the door open. The gate of space is being charged. Ron could only suppress his excitement and decided to study it carefully. After all, this thing is still unknown to him. I don't know if there are any restrictions or the like. Moreover, the space law contained in it can also make Ron's magic advance by leaps and bounds. Especially spells about space. Boom boom boom. Hearing the knock on the door, Ron closed the door of space with a wave of his hand. Anything produced by the system can be included in the system space. Enter. A cloaked supergiant enters. She is now basically wearing a cloak, always covering her skin color under the white cloak. Definitely, she was still wearing the tight black battle suit normally. It also showed off her beautiful figure. Supergiant has also been with him for many years without knowing it. Although he wasn't as clingy to him as he was when he was a child, and had to accompany him at night, but he was always by his side. There is not much resemblance to the unscrupulous and vicious Supergiant in his heart. The two of Amora are really useless. Up to now, there are only a dozen or so people in the main God Council. Supergiant complained to Ron. This is normal. Odin doesn't seem to want to make things easy for us. Even Brunhild and S.H.I.E.L.D have been suppressed. Ron's expression was calm, he didn't know what he was thinking. With the appearance of Ron, after knowing that Brunhild and S.H.I.E.L.D were trained by him, they are no longer Odin's most trusted subordinates. This is a very normal thing, and the two of S.H.I.E.L.D did not complain. But there is still some resentment in my heart. As for the two of Amora, they secretly win over their subordinates, and they can help Ron control Asgard at that time. It's just a pity that Odin didn't relax his attention to them, but kept a close eye on them. So Amora and the two have nothing to do. They don't dare to use magic to control others at will, because it will be easy to be discovered. Otherwise, it will be difficult to be caught by Asgard and thrown into the prison. Originally, the reason why Lorelei was caught in the prison and later escaped to the Earth was chased by S.H.I.E.L.D, because she used her ability at will. Moreover, once their abilities are exposed, Odin will be very afraid. Can you not be afraid of being able to control others as soon as you open your mouth? To put it bluntly, although Ron has a god position, he doesn't have much power. As long as Odin is not dead, Asgard will always listen to him. When are we leaving? Supergiant didn't know how many times he asked. Soon, Ron thought. Supergiant wants to go elsewhere to help him develop his power. I have to say that Supergiant deserves to be raised by him since childhood. For his things are the most heartfelt. On this day, Ron, who was basking in the sun and practicing magic, opened his eyes. He felt that a piece of magic he had left back then had responded. Someone is approaching Tesseract. When Ron and S.H.I.E.L.D put Tesseract into the Norse cult on Earth, he had an extra heart and left a magic of his own on it. As long as someone approaches, he will be alerted. This is Ron's spell to prevent himself from losing track of time. Because the Tesseract stored in Norway is alive, it means that the time point has reached modern times. Although it is not a day in the sky in Asgard, a year on the ground. But the long time also makes it easy for them to lose track of time. So this magic is useful. Earth, Norway. After nearly 1,000 years, the Norse religion has already turned from prosperity to decline. The entire Norse religion is not like Ron and the others when they came to Earth. There are many people. Now it adds up to less than 100 people. These 100 people are still facing massacre. A group of soldiers wearing Hydra uniforms, led by the leader S.H.I.E.L.D, began to slaughter these believers. The current pope was captured directly, without any resistance ability. You can't even call him pope, you can only call him bishop. In this world, Norseism is no longer as influential as it was then. S.H.I.E.L.D lifted the bishop by his collar, and the huge force directly lifted the bishop in midair. This is an old man with white hair. Tell me, where is Odin's treasure? S.H.I.E.L.D asked coldly. I don't know where he heard that the treasure of the god King Odin is stored here. But the secret did get out. The bishop panicked and said, no, there are no treasures here. This is a secret guarded by the Norse cult for generations, and he will not tell it even if he dies. In fact, it is true. Boom. With a bombardment from Hydra, the entire Norse church was pierced. Wherever you put Tesseract, it will be found. As a wall depicting the statue of Odin was knocked down, the bishop's face turned liver-colored. Seeing his expression, S.H.I.E.L.D immediately smiled smugly. Odin's treasure, here he comes. A crazy look appeared on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s face. If he knew that he was so disrespectful, Odin would definitely kill him with a thunderbolt. S.H.I.E.L.D ordered people to get rid of the bishop, and the Norse religion has since disappeared in history. Just like the Vikings, no matter how brilliant they were at the time, they still disappeared. All the Hydra soldiers rushed in. Waiting for the dust to disperse, a coffin appeared in front of everyone. S.H.I.E.L.D opened it frantically, and saw a box and a portrait. He froze for a moment, opened the box first, and saw the Tesseract inside. Although he didn't know what it was, he felt that it was a treasure, and it didn't look like it belonged to the earth. Only then did he pick up the portrait. There are two people in the portrait, a man and a woman. The man is wearing modern clothes, and the woman is wearing a battle armor with a cold face. The woman was holding a box in her hand, it was the one he found. War goddess Sif and unknown gods. S.H.I.E.L.D looked at the words under the portrait, and his hands trembled slightly. Is there really a god? He thought it was legendary before, even if he found Odin's treasure, he still didn't believe it. But looking at this ancient portrait, he couldn't help being silent. Even though this painting is well preserved, its sense of age can still be clearly perceived. So, S.H.I.E.L.D had it sealed up as a top-secret document of Hydra. As far as the portraits of the two gods can be clearly distinguished, it cannot be overstated how many levels of top secret. With S.H.I.E.L.D finding Tesseract, it represents the reappearance of infinite gems. The Earth is finally no longer peaceful and stable. Ron called Supergiant and others. He didn't like the haul very much, especially if it was sent by Odin. Ron prefers what he has. To put it bluntly, the ambition is too big. Ron sat high on the main seat, and everyone arrived in no time. Asgard likes this kind of high seat very much, because it can give the superior a feeling of looking down on the subordinates. Similarly, it will also increase the majesty of the superior. Ron's fingers tapped rhythmically on the side handle, which felt good to him. Especially the Supergiant, Sif, Brynhild and others below couldn't help but bring a sense of seriousness. Not to mention Gamora and Lorelei, whose souls are given to Ron. Ron stopped and leaned forward slightly. It's time, Supergiant and I have to get out of here. So, here's a little meeting I called. Ron looked at the people below, they all had a look of astonishment. Gamora couldn't help panicking. Master, you are gone, what should we do? You settle down first, don't be caught by Asgard. Ron responded. Gamora and Lorelei had no choice but to nod. Lorelei's eyes were filled with excitement. Is the time approaching? Hearing Gamora call Master, both Sif and Brynhild glanced at them. Even though it's not the first time I've heard it, I still feel very uncomfortable. Teacher, what about us? Although Brynhild didn't panic, he was still a little bit reluctant. They've been with Ron for too long. Brynhild, in particular, thought that Ron would give up on himself at the beginning, and later studied with Ron and worshipped him as his teacher. It has been more than 3,000 years. 3,000 years, even for the Asgardians, is equivalent to half a lifetime. You are definitely here to stay. Odin will not let you go. Ron said to them. Brynhild and Sif fell silent. Apparently, with Odin no longer trusting them, they were also starting to feel lost. Not sure what exactly to do. Ron looked at the two of them and said nothing more. Go get ready. After exhorting Supergiant, they all left slowly. Teacher. Brynhild stayed. Ron looked into her eyes, Brynhild at the moment full of confusion. She is the one who has followed Ron the longest, and has deep feelings for Ron. After all, Asgardians have plenty of time to cultivate love. I will miss you. We can meet again, boo-boo. Ron smiled, and he wasn't going to be away for long. In fact, he also has deep feelings for Brynhild. After all, the two stayed in the universe for so long in order to find the soul gem. And it's always just the two of them. After decades of being together day and night, who would believe that nothing happened? I love you, Ron. Finally, looking at Ron's back, Brynhild couldn't help but said. Ron turned his head to look at her and sighed. If it was between me and Thor, who would you choose to help? Realizing something, Brynhild opened his mouth. Then it was covered by Ron. It took a long time before she let go and said, think about it, I don't need you to make a decision right away. Brynhild stood there in a daze, and it took him a while to recover. One side is his teacher and the person he has always loved, and the other side is the orthodox son of a god king. It was also difficult for Brynhild to make a choice for a while. Ron and Supergiant went straight to the spaceport, and the Millennium Falcon was still here. The shape and file size of the Millennium Falcon seem out of place with Asgard's warships. But it's enough for two people. Supergiant glanced behind and frowned slightly. Looks like Odin is happy. Ron smiled at her. Just kidding, sent a few people to follow them, knowing they are leaving, can you not be happy? As the Millennium Falcon slowly lifted into the air, Thor and Loki, who followed all the way, breathed a sigh of relief. The two brothers really have a psychological shadow. Especially Thor, who didn't even dare to fight during this period of time, and had to avoid others when drinking. As for Loki, he doesn't even sneak up on Thor these days. Let's go, to Earth. Ron activated the Millennium Falcon, and the Millennium Falcon flew towards Earth at a very fast speed. Still unscrupulous. In this era, there is no technology on Earth that can detect the arrival of the Millennium Falcon. At the moment, World War II is taking place. Coming to the Earth, Ron felt a gunpowder. Definitely, he has no intention of intervening in this kind of battle. Because no matter how you fight, both sides are common humans. Don't look at the United States Captain Steve Rogers, who was able to fight Thanos a few times and force a 50-50 split, but he is just a human being after all. It's like Asgard doesn't care about the Earth's native forces killing people. They only care about the other forces in the 9 realms to capture the Earth, just like the Frost Titan was overwhelmed. After all, Asgard did not interfere with Earth's sovereignty. So the reputation of Asgard's ruler is completely in name only. Or Odin's ambitions are not so big. If it was based on Odin's idea of rule from the beginning, no other organization in the 9 realms would be allowed to appear. But now, it doesn't matter. After the Millennium Falcon landed, Ron stowed it straight into the system space. It's not done in Asgard because it's too obvious. However, he also saw a plane passing in front of him in the distance. Apparently the Millennium Falcon was spotted. Quote. What if no one can find out? Supergiant glanced at Ron. It was an accident. It was an accident, Ron said. Because the other party just happened to pass by unintentionally. Then, a spaceship was seen descending from space to Earth. Let the other party almost directly doubt life. However, Ron couldn't let the other party go away casually. With his right hand, Ron grabbed the old-fashioned plane that turned around and tried to escape in the distance. Then, the plane flew back uncontrollably and hit the ground directly. The flight crew was not injured, but quickly jumped off, looking at Ron and the two in horror. "This mustache. Howard Stark?" Ron asked strangely. "Yes, it's me." "No, how do you aliens know my name?" Howard didn't dare approach the two of them. As for why the two were confirmed to be aliens. First of all, the spaceship, he can confirm that this is something that the Earth cannot do. Secondly, it is Supergiant's skin, which is too conspicuous. There is absolutely no blue-skinned person on Earth. Don't be afraid, we have been paying attention to the Earth for a long time. Ron laughed and began to fool around. "We are the gods of the North, Thor knows that, right?" Howard nodded subconsciously. "Norse mythology. Is there really a god in this world? Then what do you want?" Howard asked nervously. "Since there are gods, doesn't that mean the Earth is in danger?" "We are not going to do anything, but we want you not to tell this matter," Ron said. Howard breathed a sigh of relief. "I promise you, I will never tell anything about it." Ron didn't say anything further. The main reason is that Howard is useless to him. Or the entire Stark family is nothing to him. He is not like other time travelers, he still needs the shares of the Stark family to increase his status or something. So, Ron waved his hand, and Howard Stark was just teleported away by him. Ron and Supergiant didn't care if something was revealed. If you care about it, you won't appear on Earth. Moreover, after Howard was teleported away, a gold halo appeared next to the two of them. A mage with a shiny head came out of it. Strong. Ron looked at the other's hairstyle and thought. There is no way, a bald head is a standard equipment for the strong, and for a while, Supergiant also wanted to become a bald head. "Friend of Asgard, Agamotto mage told me about you," Ancient One said with a smile. Although she couldn't see Ron's future and past with Eye of Agamotto, Agamotto still told her. "Ancient One mage?" asked Ron. "Yes, Agamotto mage has gone to another world." Ancient One still had a smile on his face. Ron nodded. "Sure enough, I didn't see the second side of Agamotto. Although Agamotto is not considered to be death, in the true sense. But he really only has the soul state left. Therefore, it is very clear that Ancient One said that he went to another world instead of dying. In the realm of Supreme Mage, even if the body dies, their souls will not disappear easily. As long as they think about it, they can wander around with their souls. I just want to know, what are you doing here on Earth? Ancient One asked. We're going to be on Earth for a while, and Odin doesn't want us to stay in Asgard any longer, Ron said casually to Ancient One. Ancient One naturally nodded. She couldn't refuse either. Although her current strength may be stronger than that of Agamotto back then, she knows the strength of the Asgard people. From the countless pieces of the future she's seen, she knows how much potential the guy named Thor has. And what kind of strength is the current god King Odin? I have to sigh, Time Gem is really a good thing. So she didn't dare to provoke Ron, who could hang up Agamotto and beat him up. Then I can only wish you a good time. After Ancient One finished speaking, he directly entered the portal and left. There is nothing left to do. Ron and the others obviously didn't need her as a tour guide. After Ancient One left, Ron's right hand flickered. God's left hand. A holy light appeared, and then illuminated on the spot. Hiss. As if something had been burned dry, a black smoke appeared and then slowly disappeared. As a powerful mage, Ron can naturally feel that this is extremely pure dark energy. In this world, such pure dark energy can only come from the dark dimension. Thinking that the reason why Ancient One can live for so long is because it absorbed the energy of the dark dimension, Ron didn't care. The lifespan of human beings is still too short, even mage can't live long and see for a long time. Agamotto couldn't wait until Ron saw him for the second time. However, Ron did not expect that the holy light could restrain the energy of the dark dimension so much. Let's go. Where do you want to go? Ron asked Supergiant. Supergiant tilted his head and thought for a moment, then said in a low voice, I'm not familiar with this world. I forgot. Ron patted her on the head. Don't shoot. Supergiant is still not used to it. She put on a hat for it, and Ron even patted her on the head. Let me show you what flight is. Ron didn't answer her, but put his arms around Supergiant directly. Then, boom, like an explosion, a large crater was left on the ground, and the surrounding land was directly split open by this blow. Then, the two disappeared into the air. Ron still slowed down flight. Because of the speed, Supergiant simply can't bear it. If you want to withstand the speed of superluminal speed, you must have a strong body, otherwise your body will be shattered directly in the flight. This is a desert, and it has existed on my planet, but our planet is not so big. In the desert, Supergiant showed nostalgic look. She didn't have a deep memory at the time. Then, her planet simply disappeared. Ron didn't say much, and continued to walk her around. The most important thing on the earth is definitely the sea, which is not so grand in Asgard. Among the 9 realms, only the earth has the most abundant water element. More than half of the place was submerged by seawater. The former worldly giant python is also in the depths of the bottom of the sea. This also shocked Supergiant. The endless ocean, standing on the sea and looking around, immediately gives people a feeling of despair. It seemed impossible to leave this confinement. Definitely, after a trip around the world, Supergiant almost fainted. When Ron put her down, Supergiant took several seconds to stabilize. Fortunately, her physical fitness is much stronger than her original. Otherwise, I really can't stand this kind of flight speed. Just like if the common people fly in an airplane without glass blocking, huge amounts of wind alone can suffocate a person to death. Not to mention the huge amounts of drag and impact in the air under fast flight. This is where Supergiant looked around, an ice field. This is also a very rare case in Asgard. Asgard is located in the plains, and the climate has always been very constant. Although it is very suitable for ethnic living, it also lacks a little change. This is Soviet Russia, also known as the polar bear. Ron looked at Supergiant and laughed. She looked a little uncomfortable now. The white of Supergiant's eyes gave him a hard look. What are we doing here? Supergiant, we are here to negotiate. Naturally, Supergiant didn't understand this stock, but soon, they found an organization based in polar bears. Leviathan. Leviathan is a sea monster that symbolizes evil in the Bible. In many religions, Leviathan has become synonymous with demons. Therefore, it is obviously not a good thing to use this name as the name of the organization. Ron didn't have any idea of doing justice for the heavens, he just wanted to have his own power on the earth. Ron had considered S.H.I.E.L.D or even Hydras. But these 2 volumes are too big, and it will take a lot of Ron's time to control them. The main thing is that neither S.H.I.E.L.D nor Hydra is of much use to Ron. Does S.H.I.E.L.D have the ability to help him attack Asgard, or does Hydra have this ability? As for controlling the earth, isn't it a matter of minutes before he becomes the God King? So, this kind of time-wasting thing, Ron just gave up. Leviathan, on the other hand, is easier to control, and just gives himself and Supergiant a place to stay. Definitely, Ron wouldn't say that he came here to train Black Widow. Ron hadn't really thought about how Earth could help. At most, that is to gather some people with super abilities. But those people are still a lot worse than Asgard warrior. Ron, what is needed is advanced combat power. He didn't want to become a bare-bones commander, nor did he want all his subordinates to be trash. Therefore, you can only choose your subordinates selectively. Ron set his sights on what would become Captain Marvel. Thanos without the Infinity Gauntlet can't be Captain Marvel's opponent if he goes all out. Such a powerful person should naturally be paid under his command. However, it was still a little early, and Ron was in no hurry. With his super hearing, Ron quickly found the location of the Leviathan organization. Then take the Supergiant and kill it directly. This group of common people was much easier to control than Ron thought. With a random thought, Supergiant controlled the other party. There is no sense of conquest at all. All it takes is time. Ron showed his strength and identity, and the people of Leviathan immediately fell to the ground after knowing it. God is here, doesn't this mean that Leviathan is going to take off? So months passed, and Ron and Supergiant had Leviathan completely under their control. After all, Leviathan is completely incomparable with an organization like Hydra that spreads all over the world. Leviathan only has a base in the territory of the polar bear, and it is regarded as the polar bear's own organization. As for Hydra, although it cooperates with the leader in name, Schmidt has his own ideas. And because Hydra has locations all over the world. So there are countless forces within Hydra. If it is controlled, it will definitely be more troublesome than Leviathan. After taking control of Leviathan, Ron and Supergiant have nothing to do. Ron's eyes scanned a folder, and then saw the words on it. I quickly found my goal. Red House. He picked it up with interest, and looked at it. As an underground organization, Leviathan naturally needs agents. And the place where they train their agents is called the Red House. The Red House will only cultivate one top-notch agent, and the others will be dismissed, just like raising GU. As the top agent, he will be named Black Widow by the Red House. As a title, Black Widow is naturally not exclusive to the later Natasha Romanoff. In fact, the Red House has almost bred the first generation of Black Widow. Master Celestial, are you interested? Ron immediately called someone over to ask, and the other party immediately understood. Yes, I want to see. Ron nodded, and then followed his men to the scene of the Red House. Casually brought his subordinates to teleport over, this fierce-looking polar bear man became more honest. It's just that his face is matched with this honest expression, which makes people feel very strange. Ron didn't look at him, but at the agent trained in the Red House. The Red House is just like its name, with red paint around it, and it is completely closed. These female agents trained were all selected at a very young age, and they have been trained for an unknown amount of time. So, they didn't even think about running away now. Human habit is a terrible thing. When you get used to it, you won't want to change it. After these female agents found that they couldn't escape, they naturally had to get used to it and stay. That's right, the Red House trains only female agents. Compared with men, although women have great weaknesses, they also have advantages that men do not have. For example, many things are not suitable for male agents, but female agents have no doubts in this regard. Therefore, Leviathan only trains female agents. And there may be a gap in physical fitness, but combat awareness and skills can be made up for through training. Definitely, the most important thing about an agent is its versatility. Especially one that can become a Black Widow. When Ron came, the agents were going to sleep. Boom boom. In the entire dormitory, there were only the footsteps of Ron and the leader of the Red House beside him. The agents all looked at him silently. Ron frowned as he glanced over. There are even children in their teens. But he didn't think about changing it, because these children would not even get used to it when they went out. This is Celestial Master, come to watch the final competition tomorrow. Whoever can become Black Widow will be rewarded by Celestial Master. The head of the Red House is a middle-aged woman named Naden. As soon as she spoke, everyone immediately looked at her. Then, the eyes looking at Ron were very hot. Although I don't know what the so-called Celestial Master means, but if you can get his favor, you don't have to worry about it. I hope that tomorrow everyone can show the effect of their long-term training. Whoever can become Black Widow will be reused. Quote. Ron said a few words casually, and I have to say it was very cool. So many women are staring at him, wishing they could eat him up. Okay, everyone go to bed. Ron's expression didn't change. Crack. Then, he saw that all the female agents shackled their left hands to the head of the bed. No wonder he saw that all the female agents had marks on their hands. He glanced at Naden, and Naden hurriedly said, Master Celestial, this is a request from our Red House. It was originally to prevent them from escaping. Ron nodded. In fact, there is no need to worry about them running away while sleeping. However, agents cannot change this habit. So much so that when they go out on missions, they may not be able to sleep without handcuffs when they sleep. Habits are horrible. Ron and Naden left straight away, then turned off the lights. He is still looking forward to tomorrow's Black Widow election. The first generation Black Widow. Ron had just checked, and there wasn't a woman named Natasha Romanoff. Apparently, she wasn't born very early like in the comics. It is very likely that she is the Black Widow that was later cultivated by the Red House. Therefore, the first generation of Black Widow is someone else. This makes Ron feel a little sorry. A Natasha Romanoff who has not been polluted is still very interesting. Soon came the second day. The competition between agents began, which feasted Ron's eyes. Because every agent who can survive until now has a very high appearance, not to mention the figure. Going through the same exercise as a special soldier every day, maybe he has more muscles than a man. Moreover, he is proficient in multiple languages. There are also all kinds of training. They can fly airplanes and tanks, and they can also take advantage of women. As for what the advantage is, everyone understands it. Definitely, these are the most basic. This competition is not about these. Instead, it's the on-the-spot ability and the combat ability. All agents have tasks to be sent out, and then the final battle will be carried out after completing the tasks. Just like raising GU, they have to fight with each other. Can use a variety of weapons, and can kill people. Ron could see that their combat ability was no worse than that of the world's top agents. Still a feast for the eyes. In the end, only a woman in her 20s with auburn hair had the last laugh. Other agents will naturally not be wasted. But only she can get the title of Black Widow. What is her name? Ron asked Nathan beside him. Dottie Underwood. Nathan immediately replied. She is the most excellent among them. She can learn everything quickly. Now it seems that she can inherit the title of Black Widow. Good. Ron nodded, and then Nathan went to announce that Dottie Underwood became the ace agent of the Red House, Black Widow. The first generation Black Widow. Dottie just wore a smirk that had been practiced countless times. As for the others, they looked at her with envy and envy. Everyone wants to be the strongest. Because only in this way can we guarantee that we will survive. No one knows whether the loser will be abandoned by the Red House. But obviously, the Red House is not so rich and powerful. Are these female agents who have been trained for more than 10 years abandoned? That's not a loss. Therefore, the Red House still has the last assessment. Celestial Master, the Red House still has one last assessment. What assessment? Looking at Nathan's slutty smile, Ron asked. First drop of blood. Every agent who leaves the Red House has to go through this. Celestial Master knows that the biggest weakness of women compared to men is not physical, but mentality. Women are the easiest to be emotional, especially the one who took their blood. Listening to Nathan's words, Ron suddenly understood. That's what it means. In order to let the agent out of the Red House not be easily emotional, and then cause the task to fail. So before they leave the Red House, their first blood will be taken away, and then they will lose their fertility ability. I have to say, very cruel. But this is very effective, and it can basically make them lose their maternal feelings. You can do whatever it takes to complete the task. In this way, even if you sacrifice your body for the mission, there is nothing wrong with it. Ron could only nod heavily. Then he said, send Dottie over here. ... Next, Dottie Underwood, who became Black Widow, became the most powerful man on Leviathan. Because she got the attention of Celestial Master Ron. Naturally, she also omitted the last step, without losing her fertility. But she will not be allowed to carry out dangerous tasks. Agents have various abilities, even if they don't perform tasks, they can do anything. Dottie slowly took over Leviathan's affairs under Ron's arrangement. What's wrong? Ron looked at the upset Supergiant in puzzlement. Ever since Ron brought back Dottie, the original Black Widow, from the Red House, Supergiant has been unhappy. What do you say? Supergiant glared at him. I have to say it's kind of fun for Supergiant to be pissed off. Jealous? Who would be jealous? If you think too much, I won't be jealous for you. Supergiant immediately explained. But it looks very pale. Ron suddenly felt a headache. Supergiant grew up with him, and it feels strange now. So, Ron had to avoid the subject. As the war almost over. It will probably be this year. Supergiant also said casually. At the moment is a long time since Red Skull found Tesseract. Definitely, just 1 year after Red Skull found Tesseract, Beacon Country also started a huge amounts of plan. Super Soldier Project. The Lighthouse Kingdom and the Empire on which the sun never sets have invested heavily in this plan, hoping to rely on countless super soldiers to change the battlefield situation and defeat fascism. As a result, on the day the super soldier plan was implemented, a super soldier was indeed successfully created. The United States Captain, Steve Rogers. But unfortunately, Dr. Erskine, who was in charge of the super soldier project, was assassinated on the spot by Hydra agent. As a result, the super soldier plan that had been prepared for a long time fell through. Obviously, What the Beacon country needs is a group of super soldiers, not just the captain of the United States. As a result, the captain of the United States became a tool man like the timeline, acting as an actor to sell war bonds. Later, the captain of the United States showed his prowess and showed his strength. Then he created the Roaring Commando, chased after Hydra and destroyed countless bases. Then, on March 5, 1945, the captain of the United States defeated Red Skull and fell into the frozen ocean. At this point, the Second World War is coming to an end. And Ron and the others just happen to control Leviathan. Whether it's the United States captain or what, Ron has no interest. What is it that a mortal body is comparable to a god? Ron said it was just a 50-50 split. This represents the fragile pride of the people in the lighthouse country. To put it bluntly, Steve is just a common person, should Ron care about him? The war ended quickly enough. It didn't take long for the Second World War to end, Supergiant said disdainfully. The war that ended in just a few years is really weak enough. Ron felt the same way. Having gone through the Nine Realms War, any war one sees now feels incomparable in scale. In the Nine Realms War, only Jotunheim was attacked, and it has been attacked for decades. The entire Nine Realms War lasted for a long time. But this is also normal. The Nine Realms War is, after all, a level universe war. And this is just a big war on the Earth, and it is definitely incomparable in scale. Get ready, we're leaving, Ron said to Supergiant. He is not prepared to stay on Earth for decades. Because the Earth is still too backward, and it is very uncomfortable to live in. If you really want to settle down, you might as well be in Asgard. At least the technology and the like are very advanced. On the icy ocean, search planes roared past. They wanted to find the hero of the war, the captain of the United States. If it weren't for the presence of the United States captain, perhaps Schmidt's plan would have succeeded. At that time, the entire lighthouse country will be turned into a wasteland. Therefore, after the captain of the United States fell into the frozen ocean, they immediately sent people to look for it. Definitely, the most active one is Howard Stark. Peggy, I'm definitely going to find Steve, Howard said to the British female officer beside him. Peggy Carter didn't speak, just nodded silently. Just before Steve fell into the frozen ocean, he said he wanted to dance with her. Why? Howard sighed. He didn't know how to appease Peggy either. Back then, he had also taken a fancy to the other party. It's just that, with Steve's sudden birth, he naturally lost his competitiveness as a playboy. Peggy, let's build an organization together. What are you going to do? Peggy Carter recovered and asked. Naturally, her life cannot be filled with grief and indignation. Indeed, something should be done. I don't know yet. Howard shook his head. He is also in a very bad situation now. The war is over, but his life is not easy. Because the Stark Group is an arms dealer. It is to make war money. How can you get rich without war? This is also the reason why many people in the lighthouse country can't understand him now, and even want to get him down. Therefore, they can only suspend this idea temporarily. However, the idea of creating an organization is still feasible. What are you going to do next? The war is over. Howard asked Peggy. In this day and age, there is a lot of discrimination. Women are discriminated against, black people are discriminated against. As a woman, even though Peggy proved herself in the war, she couldn't get herself a high position. I will join the Science Strategy Corps (SSR), and when you think of something to do, come find me. Peggy has no choice, there are not many choices for her. And she obviously never thought about retiring, getting married and having children. Even Steve is gone, who else is he going to marry? So she can only focus on work. The Scientific Strategic Corps is the predecessor of S.H.I.E.L.D. I got something. Just then, a voice came from Howard's headset. What? Howard shouted excitedly. The Rubik's Cube is something like a Rubik's Cube, and there is a huge amounts of box. The other party also said. Although Howard was a little disappointed, he still said, hurry up and get the things up. Is it Steve? Peggy asked immediately. No. Howard was a little embarrassed, and Peggy was even more disappointed. They have been looking for it at sea for a long time, and if they don't find it, even the military of the lighthouse country will not keep sending people to look for it. During this time, Beacon Country is shaping Steve Rogers as a hero, a legendary existence. And a dead legendary is definitely better than a living one. Even Howard didn't want to find Steve because of his friendship. It's just that he wants to study super soldier serum. Peggy is also very clear about this. The people who did not find Steve Rogers flew back to the lighthouse country. Then Howard saw what was salvaged. Tesseract. True to infinite gems, it will appear in the world after all. Although Howard didn't know what Tesseract was, as a scientist, he was keenly aware of its difficulty. This is a huge energy body. Therefore, he is very interested in Tesseract and plans to take it back for research. Then he saw the huge amounts of box that was salvaged along with the Tesseract. Open the box, and inside is an extremely old painting. Seeing the person in the painting, Howard trembled for a moment. He has recognized each other. Then he quickly closed it, telling himself that all this was true. What's this? Peggy didn't see clearly, but was curious about Howard's reaction. This is top secret and no one else should know. Howard said to Peggy. In Howard's view, this painting is 10,000 times more important than Tesseract. Peggy looked at his expression and nodded heavily. She rarely saw Howard, who was a playboy, show such a serious expression. It seems that this matter is unusual. Definitely, she still knew what it was. And through Howard's performance, she also guessed something. For example, the pictures above are all real. And this so-called Tesseract is also the treasure of God King Odin. It has to be said that even people decades later may not be able to accept this point. Let alone this era. As a result, Peggy Carter felt dizzy all over. While they were looking, Ron had already left with Supergiant on the Millennium Falcon. Kamar Taj, the Ancient One wearing the Eye of Agamotto, wonders if the future will change. But she sees various futures, but still has nothing to do with Ron. Can't help but sigh. Even the god King Odin cannot escape the future. It seems that Agamotto Mage is right, never think about playing with time, because it will be played by time. Knowing this, Ancient One respected Ron even more. This is Ron entering the universe once again. But they didn't stay away from the Nine Realms, because not long after they came out of the Nine Realms, they happened to encounter several major battles. Countless warships lined up in the universe, and then fired endlessly. As a result, the Millennium Falcon didn't dare to rush directly, so it could only find an unmanned star to stop beside it. Seeing this situation, Ron and Supergiant didn't leave either. Although I know that this war will not affect the Nine Realms, I am not afraid of 10,000, just in case. Ron's supervision came in handy in this situation. Even if the true knowledge spar is not used, both parties can be seen. One side is races with various skin colors, including blue skin, white skin, and black skin, and the other side is pure green skin. Skrulls and Kree. Ron frowned. It seems that this is a battle between the two sides. As for the result, he definitely knows it very well. After this war, the Skrulls were almost wiped out. If S.H.I.E.L.D. hadn't taken them in, the Skrull would have disappeared completely. As a member of the Nine Realms, Ron didn't have the slightest affection for either race. There is a saying that makes sense. Non my family, its heart must be different. Ron wasn't a saint and wouldn't think a Skrull who was having so much fun with the Kree at the moment would be a good guy. Therefore, he has no reason to leave. So, Ron drove the Millennium Falcon back to the Nine Realms, and came directly to Nidavel, the outermost part of the Nine Realms. Nidavel is not very far from Asgard, but it is at the outermost edge of the World Tree. So, a series of things happened in Asgard later, and Bifrost was smashed by Thor. Thanos was able to take the opportunity to block Nidavel. That's right, Nidavellir, also known as Walt-Alheim, is the land of Dwarf. Although called dwarfs, they are much taller than the Asgardians and almost indistinguishable from Titans. The reason for this is that they are creatures created by the Titans. Compared with the Titans, they are naturally dwarfs. The dwarfs are rough in appearance, strong and brave, bold and uninhibited, down-to-earth and diligent. One of Asgard's best friends. It's just that the number of people is too small. When the Millennium Falcon landed and saw that Ron was in Asgard, they immediately became enthusiastic. Friends of Asgard, are you building something? Immediately, Dwarf came up to ask. Dwarf is very confident in his skills. Most of Asgard's equipment is made by them. This helped Asgard win the War of the Nine Realms. However, Since the god King Odin lost his ambition, Asgard and the dwarf have less communication. That's why I saw Ron so enthusiastic. No, we're just looking for a place to rest, Ron said to Dwarf. Naturally, this did not attract the attention of King Dwarf, so he found a place in Nidavel and stayed there. He estimated that this war would not end so easily. I just don't know, how long has the war between the Kree and the Skrulls lasted? But before Ron could continue watching, he received a prompt. The gate of space is fully charged. Seeing the prompt that popped up suddenly, he was a little surprised but also very happy. Finally recharged. It's been a while since Ron got the dimension gate. But it was charging all the time, so Ron couldn't turn it on. As a treasure obtained by the Super God lottery, it really made Ron a little depressed. The good news is that waiting pays off. Ron asked Supergiant to rest, and then took out the door of space. He reached out and pushed it up, and the door of space was like a stone door that had been covered in dust for tens of thousands of years, even he had to use a lot of strength to push it. Reminder: entering another world can only stay for 24 hours, do you want to enter? Yes, Ron calmly chose to answer. And then, whoosh. In his perception, his whole body twisted, and the power of space tore at him. But he refrained from using magic to control these forces. Because once he makes a random shot, the teleportation is likely to be interrupted, and he may even encounter a space storm. In Nidavel, however, it is not so complicated. In just an instant, both Ron and the space gate disappeared. Supergiant wanted to find him, but found that he was missing. Boom. Ron found that his body fell from the sky, and then he directly controlled and stepped on the ground, which naturally caused a lot of commotion. He didn't care because the system still had prompts. I'm in another world now, do you record the coordinates? Record. Ron immediately chose to record first, anyway, he won't lose money. After the record is completed, wait for the next time the space gate is fully charged, and you can choose to enter this world again. The last reminder of the gate of space disappeared, and Ron also looked around. Although I don't know what kind of world this is, but there is no record of coordinate restrictions. This is why he is so decisive. Is this an island? Ron looked around and found himself on the beach with countless deep forests behind him. Apparently, it looks like it's a small island, and it's still inhabited. Because he clearly heard a heartbeat in the sand dunes next to him. He looked over, as if penetrating, and saw a little girl buried in the sand dunes. The other party didn't have any questions, but instead kept calm and didn't dare to make a sound. Come out, I see you. Ron smiled slightly. After he finished speaking, the little girl paused. Then, I saw the dunes begin to arch. Soon a small head popped out, and sand slid from her hair. Ba ba ba. She quickly spit out the sand in her mouth, and then got out of it. Ron felt that the other party was a little familiar, and he was definitely not from common. The other party has divine power, and he just came out of the buried sand dunes casually. Little sister, what's your name? Why did you bury yourself in the dunes? Ron showed a warm smile, and asked like abduction. My name is Diana, as for why I am in the dunes. Diana glanced at Ron complaining and said, isn't it you? You jumped from the sky, and the sand fell on me. Chapter 51. Ron paused. Unexpectedly, the other party turned out to be Wonder Woman Diana. It's just, is this too small? Hearing her name, Ron confirmed it. The island, the little girl with supernatural powers, and his super hearing tells him that the island is full of thirsty women. Cough cough. The Amazons are like that. Maybe you will never see a man in your life. Who are you? Diana looked at Ron warily. Mom said no one can come to Paradise Island, let alone, are you a man? Quote. Regarding Diana's escape, Ron said, my name is Ron, and I am definitely a man. I do not believe. Diana said with her hands on her hips. Don't believe me. Just try it and you'll know. How to try? Diana's eyes are full of curiosity, can this also be tried? Ron was speechless for a moment, feeling like he was cheating the little girl. Just kidding, don't take it seriously. Through a simple conversation, Ron knew that Diana in front of him was too simple. This is probably because Paradise Island is too closed. As for actually letting Diana try, then it would be a strange sorghum. Still, Diana was smart and soon realized she was being led astray. You haven't said how you came to Paradise Island. Outsiders can't get in here. Diana bared her teeth and asked. The little tiger teeth are very cute. Unexpectedly, Diana, who was cute when she was a child, would be so beautiful when she grows up. It's really. You can't judge by appearance. Didn't you see how I got in? I fell from the sky. Ron spread his hands and said, it was fun to play with Diana. Diana tilted her head with her chin in her hands and thought for a moment. It seemed that this was indeed the case. But why wasn't Ron hurt? Just when she was about to ask a question, she heard a call from the old mother. Diana, get away from him. After this time, Queen Hippolyta has arrived. In fact, the response speed of the Amazon family is very fast. Seeing a mysterious object falling from the sky, they are preparing. Then there was a loud bang, and the entire Paradise Island seemed to shake. So Queen Hippolyte and General Antiope gathered their men and came. But when they arrived, they saw that little Diana was chatting with strangers, and they were so angry that they were about to explode. Diana, come here, Queen Hippolyta shouted again. Diana reluctantly ran over. Although she was a little wary of Ron, she immediately relaxed under Ron's affinity. So she wanted to talk to Ron more. After all, Ron was the first man she'd ever met. Ron stood still, watching the Amazon warriors surround him, 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. These female warriors were all dressed coolly, holding spears and bows and arrows in their hands, and they all stared at him. Ron almost drools when he sees several of them. In the eyes of Amazon warrior, Ron is simply too masculine. A fit body, a handsome face, and a smile that can make people overwhelmed. Everyone wanted to eat Ron clean. Ron was secretly startled. This is indeed a paradise island, a man's paradise. However, if it is common people, I am afraid it is hell, right? This group of female warriors who haven't seen a man in countless years, who can stand it? Hippolyta looked at Ron warily, then scanned the ground. Hiss, she gasped inwardly. The entire beach at the moment has become messy, and there are some cracks on the island. You can imagine how much damage Ron's arrival has caused here. Just from this, she can conclude that Ron is very strong. At least the physical fitness is great. Diana blinked and hid behind Queen Hippolyta's thigh, then said in a milky voice, Mom, Ron is a good man. Queen Hippolyta, who was meditating, almost became angry. In just such a short time, Diana has spoken good words to strangers. If there is a little more time, I am afraid that she will be abducted directly. Diana, there are no good people in this world, especially men. Queen Hippolyta educated her daughter. The resentment in his tone made Ron gossip. Diana was the daughter of Queen Hippolyta and Zeus. With Zeus pissing nature and the chaos of the Olympus pantheon, I'm afraid the queen's life is really not easy. Ron was thinking wildly, and Diana made a face at him. Outsider, tell me your purpose. Queen Hippolyta stared at Ron closely and questioned. Things are finally back on track. Ron said loudly, I am the glory of the god of the north. I came to this world to find the gods of Olympus. I didn't expect them all to disappear. Ron said it with a hint of disdain at the end. Looks like the real thing. But it's actually true. God of the north, looking for a Greek god. Hearing this, the Amazon warriors all looked at Hippolyta. There is no way, only the queen has dealt with these people. Hippolyta was surprised, and then asked, God of the north. Who is your god king? God King Odin. How do you prove your purpose? I don't need proof, because none of you can beat me. Hearing Hippolyta's words, Ron suddenly smiled. His words immediately made everyone nervous. Hippolyta glared at him too, leading Diana back a little. Diana looked at Ron puzzled. Zeus and the others are all dead. To be honest, I am very disappointed. There is only Ares, the god of war, in this world, right? Ron looked at Hippolyta and said, then looked at Diana. And the weapon that defeated Ares. Enough. Hippolyta yelled angrily. I don't know how you know so much, but stop talking. Queen Hippolyta did enough to protect Diana from these things. After all, it was her daughter. As a mother, no one wanted her child to be in danger. So, does the queen trust me? Ron shrugged. Hippolyta hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Although she wanted to tie a mantra lasso to Ron and ask him again, she didn't dare. That's what you do for the weak. For a strong man like Ron, it's obviously impossible. Then it's no fun to piss Ron off. Therefore, Queen Hippolyta can only judge by her own experience. But based on her experience of being easily tricked by Zeus into having a child. Is that useful? In this case, then you are the guest, come with us. Hippolyta decided to take Ron to the Amazons. Although it is not wise to let an outsider in. But she can't control that much. At least she can feel a little safer there. A group of Amazon female warriors put Ron in the middle, and then pinched him from time to time. Ron had no choice but to enjoy this group of female hooligans happily. Queen Hippolyta didn't stop her, but pulled Diana and asked as close as possible. Why did your god king send you here? Let me assist someone in defeating Ares. Quote. Which other gods are there in your pantheon? Thor. Queen Hippolyta kept on talking, and Ron said the same. The 600th world obviously also has a Norse god system. It's just that the Norse gods are as miserable as the Greek gods in this world, and they all disappeared. Unlike the Marvel universe, at least Asgard has always existed. Therefore, Queen Hippolyta still knew something about the gods. As a woman of God King Zeus, she is somewhat knowledgeable. So she was silent for a while. I don't know what's going on in my mind. Ron squeezed away the female hooligans around him, and took out something with his hands. Diana, do you want a lollipop? In his hand is a lollipop with a large circle of red. Diana stared at the lollipop in his hand and asked, what's a lollipop? It's jelly beans. What are jelly beans? Ron suddenly had a headache, thought for a while and said, it's just something to eat, it's very crunchy. Is it tasty? Diana didn't know why, but she still asked curiously. Definitely delicious. Then I want it. Diana immediately let go of Queen Hippolyta and ran over. Queen Hippolyta wanted to catch her, but she didn't dare to make too much of a move to cause Ron's dissatisfaction. After all, it's not good to always be on guard against Ron, isn't it? So, she and her sister Antiope could only watch Ron warily. It's like watching a trafficker abducting minors with the same vigilance. Ron immediately handed Diana the lollipop. This is what he signed in a long time ago, don't worry, it hasn't deteriorated. Pigman's lollipop. G.G. Bond, a hero in fairy tales, G.G. Bond. This is a lollipop belonging to Pigman, also known as a super lollipop. If you eat it, you will immediately become infinitely stronger, but it was delicious. That's right, it's the Pigman who shouted that I want to fly a plane. However, this thing seems to have side effects. Just like a stimulant, there will be no strength after the effect wears off. Ron hadn't remembered this one before. But Diana at the moment has already opened, and asked Ron, how do you eat this lollipop? Bite it directly, you can also field it. As Ron spoke, he felt strange looks from the people around him. Moreover, the Amazon female warriors all looked at him. Is this a female warrior or a female hooligan? The pure Diana didn't think too much about it, and ate the lollipop with a click. Wow, it's delicious. Diana couldn't stop talking, and ate it all at once after hesitating. You know, the super lollipop is half the size of her face. Not tired. Hey, I feel hot all over my body. Diana said suddenly. What did you feed her? Queen Hippolyta asked quickly. She thought Ron wouldn't do anything when everyone was watching. Ron immediately said, it's just like spinach, and it will be very powerful after eating. Quote. Obviously, they didn't understand the stock, but they still saw little Diana showing off. Diana lifted a boulder casually and threw it directly into the sky. So, everyone looked at Ron in surprise. Judging by their expressions, they seemed to want to ask Ron for a lollipop. Ron smiled at Diana. Diana, you are very capable. Really, I like fighting too, Diana said, punching Ron directly. When? It was like hitting steel, and Diana was in pain. Why is your body so hard? Quote. Okay, Diana, this effect is only for a few minutes, be careful not to lose your strength. Ron said to Diana. At this time everyone had arrived at the resting place of the Amazons. However, after time passed, Diana did not experience side effects. Worthy of being a demigod. Then Ron looked towards the Amazons' fortress. Buildings like castles are basically constructed of huge stones and have high walls. They are built on high mountains, and the higher you go, the more important the place is. Then surrounded the tower. You don't need to look to know that the high tower in the middle is the important place of the Amazon family. Please. Queen Hippolyta looked at Ron with a complicated expression and said. They took Ron to the hall, and then sent the female warriors to prepare the dinner. For them, the dinner party is very important. Basically all the Amazons will gather together. After all, in this closed paradise island, there are really not many entertainment activities for them, and there are no strangers on the island. It would be very boring. Soon, good wine and large pieces of barbecue were brought up. Paradise Island is huge, and there's an area apparently where the Amazons hunt. As for how the barbecue tastes, Ron doesn't want to say more. There is no seasoning, it can only be considered barely edible. Fine wine didn't appeal to him either. Asgard people don't say anything else, wine is really drinkable. While drinking, Diana sat next to Ron, still full of curiosity. After all, Ron was the first stranger and man she had ever met in her life. When the two were added together, her curiosity was infinitely magnified. Can you teach me to fight? Diana asked. Definitely, but only for one day. Ron stroked her little head and smiled. Why only one day? Diana was very puzzled. Because I'm leaving in a day and I have more important things to do. Ron forced a smile and said. He also wanted to stay longer. This Amazon woman warrior is so enthusiastic. But he can't do it. Diana was a little disappointed, but she still said, then teach me to fight quickly. Don't worry about Diana, tomorrow will be enough for the day. Ron shook his head and said. What can actually be taught? The current Diana has no foundation at all. Because Queen Hippolyta wouldn't let her learn to fight. Diana, you shouldn't touch these. Sure enough, Queen Hippolyta, who had her ears sideways, heard Diana's thoughts and said immediately. No, I want to learn to fight. Diana shook her head stubbornly. Made Queen Hippolyta glaring at Ron. But Antiope was in favor of Diana's decision. She has always believed that Diana needs to have her own strength in order to change her destiny. In the end, Queen Hippolyta had no choice but to let Diana undergo training. Queen Hippolyta became a little unhappy, but it did not affect the banquet. At some point, there were a few more female warriors on the field and they started fighting and wrestling. It's real wrestling, not sumo. Great beauty and power, let Ron hooked. It's hard to see this kind of scene in Asgard, unless you peek at the training of Valkyrie. After the banquet, Diana still wants to pester Ron. But was taken away by Wang Lima, the daughter of Hippolyte, to rest. Apparently, mother and daughter were going to have an evening talk. On the second day, Ron was still full of energy. If it was only the constitution of the common Asgard people, he would definitely not be able to stand up to this group of warriors who looked like they were on the battlefield. But sorry, he now has a Superman template. Absorbed the sun for thousands of years. Staying for a year is not a problem. The Amazon warriors all laughed and came over to watch how Ron taught Diana. Amazons and Asgard have one thing in common. That is warlike. Likes to fight. The people of Asgard have such a character, wine and battle are integrated into their bones. And the Amazons really have nothing to do. In addition to watching the scenery every day, it is combat training. However, there is one more thing to do today, which is to watch Ron. It was fine, and Ron ignored it. He has taken a fancy to Diana, and he definitely cannot spoil his image in Diana's heart. Seeing that Queen Hippolyta and General Antiope looked normal, it was clear that they were not disturbed. Diana, you don't have any foundation yet, so I can only teach you some basics. Ron began to teach Diana based on his own experience. After all, he is also a good teacher. Bren Hill, Sif, and Supergiant are all taught by him. It is also full of experience. But why are they all women? I don't want it, you teach me how to fight. Diana blinked her big eyes and said aggrievedly. Ron had no choice but to say, okay then. Anyway, everyone on Paradise Island will definitely teach her the basics. Although Amazon warrior is not strong, but the basic things are definitely fine. Then, Diana was abused by Ron. She rushed up again and again, and was randomly beaten by Ron. But she is still young after all, and she has also shown her ability. Ron taught her fighting skills, she quickly learned, and can use it. Diana's combat experience began to increase rapidly in an instant. Ron had to lament that she was a monster. In terms of ability alone, she is better than the few people Ron taught before. People have to sigh that Diana is indeed a demigod, and she is also the child of Zeus. And as a second-generation god, Paradise Island had prepared countless equipment for her as early as when she was born. Unlike Thor's stupid, even the hammer was picked up by Hela. Yes, Diana, don't give up. Until the last moment of the battle, never give up. Ron kept telling her what needed to be done, and Diana obviously did. Diana, who owns the demigod constitution, fought Ron directly all day long. From a person with no foundation, he can play well. This is her powerful ability. Then Queen Hippolyta approached Ron. Ron, do you think Diana can defeat Ares? Queen Hippolyta asked. At the moment, she also knew that Ron was special. That is, Ron probably knows something. But Queen Hippolyta had no doubts either. After all, Ron is also the glory of the god of the north. It seems that it is not impossible to know the arrangement of Zeus and the others before they died. Definitely, Diana is the one that was prophesied. Ron said casually. Hope so. Hippolyta still looked worried, but decided to let her sister start training Diana. Just kidding, can Diana beat Ares? With Diana's ability, awakening with any divine power can hang Ares up and beat him. Therefore, Hippolyta's worries are out of the question. Diana knew Ron was leaving soon. Naturally, she wanted to be with Ron until the end. Even if it was only such a short time together, it is no exaggeration to say that Ron became Diana's most important person. Ron impressed Diana with his humor and ability. So in the heart of the young Diana, a shadow was left. Speaking of it, Diana was too naive. It's like a piece of white paper that hasn't been polluted by any color. Let Ron take pity on him. Don't know how many Amazon warriors complain. At night, Ron was leaving. 24 hours are approaching. He can't stay here any longer. Diana followed Ron to the beach where he landed, followed by many Amazons. No way, Ron. Ron and Diana looked at the scenery together. Watching the sun set, the sun gradually disappeared on the sea level. As time passed, Ron patted her head and said, Diana, I'm leaving. Woo woo woo. Diana's eyes turned red instantly, and she wiped her eyes and began to cry. But Ron ignored her, and she looked up. Just in time to see Ron watching her. Embarrassed, Diana glared at Ron, then stopped pretending to cry. Ron suddenly laughed. I didn't expect little Diana to have such acting skills. Can you not leave? Diana said, tugging at the hem of Ron's shirt. I'll be back to see you, Diana. Ron said, pinching her little face. His face was plump and full of feeling, so Ron couldn't put it down. After hearing Ron's words and knowing that he was determined to leave, Diana immediately fell silent. It seemed that little Diana was angry. Ron naturally has a way. He took something directly from the system space. Diana, this is my gift to you, remember to think of me. Ron said to Diana, and held a sword hilt or something in his hand. What's this? Diana reached out and took it. This is a sword hilt. It's a lightsaber. Ron taught Diana how to turn it on and use it. Lightsaber. From the world of Star Wars, after systematic strengthening, it can be used indefinitely without worrying about consumption. Under Ron's instruction, the lightsaber shone brightly. It's Blue's lightsaber, not Red's. In the Star Wars world, Blue's lightsabers are those of the Jedi, while Red's are basically Sith. Diana instantly fell in love with the cool lightsaber. Not for anything else, just because it's handsome. So, Ron was easily forgiven. I'm leaving, Diana. As soon as Ron finished speaking, he disappeared directly. Diana raised her lightsaber and stared at the deserted beach in front of her, dazed for a long time. Then, the precious lightsaber was put away. The door of space took Ron away directly, and he felt the pull. As when he came, there was no rejection and resistance to this force. Because it is easy to go wrong. Although it feels that this force is not strong, but who knows what will happen. Even if Ron's constitution is so powerful, he doesn't dare to try it casually. In just a split second, Ron was back in Nidavel, the home of the dwarf. This is the end of my first world trip. Unfortunately, only 24 hours. Ron looked at the tall dwarf outside, and compared it with the Amazon female warriors. Silently shed tears, or Paradise Island, and because of the blood relationship of the Amazon family, the female warriors are basically 1.8–1.9 meters tall, and there are not even 2 meters. Definitely, so is the blood of the Asgardians. The Aesir Protoss are basically 2 meters tall. So, when Supergiant came behind him, her height of about 18 meters did not put any pressure on Ron. Boom! Supergiant jumped right behind him and surrounded him. "You are finally back," Supergiant said in a crying voice. "I thought you didn't want me anymore." "What's the matter? I'm only away for a day." Ron laughed. "1 day? You have been away for many years," Supergiant said harshly, hugging Ron and not letting go. "What?" Ron felt the time. His spell attainment is profound, and he also has some understanding of time, so he can naturally feel the passage of time. Really, it has been a long time since he left. But he only stayed in Paradise Island for 1 day. Ron suddenly felt a sense of collapse. Then he saw the prompt on the gate of space. The speed of time flow is different in each world, completely random. Completely random. Ron was speechless, and didn't dare to use this thing casually. Moreover, maybe he has stayed here for decades, and in the 600th world, Diana is still that old. Definitely, it is more likely that when Ron goes to the 600th world again, Diana will already be Wonder Woman. This time flow rate. Not having time to think so much, Ron had to hurry to appease Supergiant. Supergiant didn't want to get off behind him anyway. During Ron's absence, she was terrified, and at one point thought Ron didn't want her anymore. Fortunately, she has been waiting here, and the dwarfs were hospitable and did not let her leave. So she made the Millennium Falcon her second home, waiting for Ron to come back. Fortunately, she waited. The moment he saw Ron, Supergiant could no longer suppress his emotions. Ron patted her on the back like coaxing a child, then squeezed her little face and said, "It's my fault, I'll tell you next time." Then, Supergiant took his head and gave it a hard hit. Ron knew the fun of Star-Lord. Are there any differences between races? Definitely, he didn't do anything excessive. He just had a quick look at this era. So, he greeted the dwarfs, then started the Millennium Falcon and left. In fact, dwarfs are also puzzled. How can anyone stay in such a small spaceship for decades? But they only saw Ron on the first day, and only saw Supergiant afterwards. The Millennium Falcon went straight into FTL flight and soon approached Earth. In fact, Nidavel is not far from the Earth, on the same plane and in a straight line. Ron thought for a while, when Thanos, the purple sweet potato essence, built the Infinity Gauntlet and launched the New York War against the Earth. Exactly the same period, and at that time, it happened that Thor Hanhan broke Bifrost. So much so that Heimdall failed to detect Thanos' machinations. Definitely, maybe noticed it, but Odin didn't care. Otherwise, the series of periods that followed would have been too coincidental. Ron could only despise Odin inwardly. Odin later told Thor that Asgard would be there as long as he was there. This sentence killed countless souls in Asgard. From Ron's point of view, the Odins are all selfish. It just so happens that Odin has to pretend to be kind and for everyone's good. Fortunately, Ron had seen the true face of Odin as early as during the Nine Realms War. The Millennium Falcon came to Earth again, and this time it didn't surprise anyone. Ron and Supergiant went straight to Polar Bear territory and found Leviathan. He was relieved that the Leviathan still existed. That means the timing doesn't seem too bad. In 1980. When Ron knew the time, he also nodded. As long as S.H.I.E.L.D didn't come out. But it's only a few decades away from Hela's return to the sky. At that time, Asgard will inevitably have another bloodbath. Celestial Master, I think Leviathan is going underground. Dottie Underwood approached Ron. She has not changed from decades ago. The main reason is that she got a drop of the Fountain of Youth from Ron. A lifespan of 1,000 years is equivalent to more than 10 extra lives for Dottie. This naturally made her absolutely devoted to Ron, and she would never say no to anything. Ron also felt fortunate that he had given her the Fountain of Youth last time, otherwise Dottie would have become an old woman when they met this time. Why? Because polar bears are getting worse and worse over the years. I guess the situation is going to change a lot. Dottie said seriously. Then go underground. You don't need the support of polar bears. Ron agreed to her decision. Dottie nodded immediately and went to work. Ron looked at Dottie's back, but felt that time was still useful. At least Dottie seems to be getting better. This is something that other longevity species do not have. Like Sif and the others, after living for so long, they still look like young girls. It is mainly a matter of mentality. Asgardians have an extremely long lifespan, so naturally they don't feel old. But Dottie is different. She knows how long her life expectancy is. And years of experience have made her more and more mature. Leviathan has been freed from polar bears over the years, so at the moment went underground at breakneck speed. Before Ron took control of it, Leviathan was the polar bear's own organization. So it took a lot of money, especially after the Cold War, wanted to continue to invest. But was rejected by Leviathan. It was later discovered that Leviathan was out of control, and there was nothing they could do. As for the Leviathan, Ron was completely out of stock, and he didn't care at all. He is simply waiting for the real Ragnarok now. Definitely, Leviathan has grown pretty well over the years. Under the leadership of Dottie, he can maintain the income and expenditure of the entire organization by himself, and the Red House is still training agents. Still, it's no match for S.H.I.E.L.D. Not long after World War II ended, the Science Strategic Organization became the Strategic Homeland Defense Offensive and Logistics Agency, the precursor to S.H.I.E.L.D. Founded by Howard Stark and Peggy Carter. Howard and Peggy have a good relationship, although Peggy has been wary of him. He also poured out the tube of blood left by the United States Captain Steve in his hand. But over time, S.H.I.E.L.D. has clearly grown into a behemoth. And there are still various plans going on internally. For example, the ongoing Pegasus Project and the Goliath Project. The Pegasus Project is to study Tesseract, and the Goliath Project is the so-called human body reduction technology. And man is the product of Goliath's plan. These achievements are incomparable to Leviathan. After all, Leviathan does not have many scientists, unlike S.H.I.E.L.D., which absorbs Hydra scientists without limit. The result has been to allow Hydra to take root within S.H.I.E.L.D. This is where Ron is too lazy to complain. Enemy scientists are using it so hard. Ron didn't plan to run around anymore. After all, the Earth is the center of the universe. No one else can find this place. So it didn't take long for Ron to see a Kree spaceship land on Earth. The Kree Empire has existed in the universe for an unknown amount of time, and its technology is naturally not comparable to that of the Earth, which is trying to catch up. So the spaceship lands without anyone noticing. But Ron is out of this range. Ron and Supergiant arrived right away, but watched from a distance first. A woman ran down from the spaceship, and she was a woman with normal skin. Perhaps it was because she also had white skin that she was sent by the Kree Empire. After all, unlike the Skrulls, the Kree can change at will. Don't catch her, Supergiant asked Ron. No, just watch her. Ron at the moment already knew who she was. Mar-Vell, a true traitor to the Kree. The Kree asked her to perform the task, but she rebelled after changing hands, and then used the Earth to study the light speed engine privately, and also saved the Skrull people very much. You know, after a short period of war, the Kree and Skrull are sworn enemies. So there's nothing wrong with saying she's a traitor to the Kree. So much so that she later brought Captain Marvel into an Earth traitor. I don't care about the safety of the Earth, and go to the universe to meddle in other people's business. Definitely, Carol Danvers wouldn't have been able to turn into Captain Marvel if it wasn't for Mar-Vell's heart of Mary. So Ron didn't just take her away. Instead, send someone to supervise her. She thought she hadn't been exposed, but she was actually being targeted. At the same time, near the Nine Realms, a huge amounts of Skrull spaceship approached the Nine Realms. Asgard spotted it first, but didn't warn. It seems that God King Odin doesn't want to care about the war between these two huge empires in the universe. Definitely, now the war has come to an end. The Skrull Empire fell apart, completely defeated by the Kree, and the remnants of the Skrull ran around. There are many Skrulls on this spaceship. And basically women and children, the hope of the Skrulls. With no one in charge, the spaceship drifted in the Nine Realms. What does Odin do? When Ron looked up and saw a Skrull spaceship floating in the universe, he immediately asked. As the territory of Asgard, the Nine Realms actually let the spaceship of the Skrulls inside. Is this the Lord of the Nine Realms? Odin is no longer worthy to be a god king. After Supergiant found out, he said immediately. She always looked down on Odin. Definitely, this is also because of being with Ron, it has been subtle. Ron has always had little respect for Odin, and he didn't take this so-called God King seriously. When Odin was brutal at first, he didn't like it. Afterwards, Ron didn't pay much attention to it. Supergiant was thus influenced by his ideas. It can't be brought close to Earth, Ron said casually. This time, Mar-Vell couldn't save the Skrulls. Ron hadn't forgotten the nature of the Skrulls, not to be deceived by their at-the-moment weakness. If only the Skrulls were as peaceful as they acted so well. It is impossible for the Skrull Empire to exist in the universe for millions of years. Still the same sentence, if you are not of my race, your heart must be different. Ron's character is cruel when he should be cruel, and kind when he should be kind. And not like Odin, who is cruel when he is cruel, and only benevolent when he is kind. Others have hit Odin in the face, and Odin can still play mercy with others. It is also enough. So Ron at the moment didn't have any soft-heartedness, and flew directly into the universe. The only Ancient One mage who found Ron did not take any action. She cares. From the countless futures she saw, most of the time the Skrulls turned their backs. In the universe, on the spaceship of the Skrulls, countless green-skinned women and children leaned against the windows, looking at the endless starry sky outside. Countless stars and planets appeared before their eyes, and then disappeared. They can only keep running away, escaping the pursuit of the Kree, until they find a place where they can survive safely. Then, it was time to think about how to restore the glory of the Skrulls. At this time, they seemed to see a light. In the endless darkness, a bright light suddenly appeared, brighter and faster than the meteors they had seen before. So much so that some Skrulls want to start making wishes and praying. Whoosh! In just an instant, this light flew from the other end of the universe to the front. Only then did they realize that it was not light at all, but a person. The Skrulls were suddenly terrified. Who is this? Is it our ally, or was it sent by the Kree? I don't know what race this is, and there is no news from our spaceship. Why can someone fly in the universe? Can someone survive directly in the universe? Even in the history of the Skrulls, few have been able to do this. So, they were intimidated. There are a few brave Skrulls who directly want to transform themselves into Ron. These Skrulls changed for a while, but in the end they just changed their skin, and then hugged their heads and screamed in pain. Seeing this scene, Ron's already cold expression became even more murderous. The Skrull's ability made him too afraid. Especially in Secret Invasion, in addition to copying appearance, they can also copy ability. Although the Skrull can only copy the appearance now, it is enough to make people feel sick. So, a sneer formed on the corner of Ron's mouth. Then flew directly to the bottom of the spaceship. Boom. Afterwards, the Skrulls on the spaceship just felt the spaceship shake, and then the whole spaceship was out of control. Although he didn't know how heavy the spaceship was, Ron couldn't feel its weight at all. Very easy, just put it on the top. It's not much different from carrying a bag in your hand. Then Ron directly dragged the spaceship and flew it. Directly smashed towards a meteorite in the distance. Hoo-hoo. The spaceship spun in the universe like a hula hoop, and smashed towards the meteorite at an extremely fast speed. Not good. The spaceship is out of control. Escape pod, hurry to the escape pod. We are the last hope of the Skrulls, we cannot just fall here. Who is that guy and what race? Why can't we copy him? Why does he have this ability? He can fly in the universe. Quote. In an instant, all the Skrulls in the spaceship panicked. They panicked and wanted to run to the escape pod, and then use the small escape pod to escape to the nearest planet. However, their spaceship was spinning continuously, causing them to be passed out by spinning as soon as they got up from their seats, and they all fell to the surroundings one by one. No, there was a Skrull mother and son who were completely motionless in the seat, and suddenly saw the meteorite in front of them. Boom. When the high-speed rotating spaceship and huge amounts of meteorites collided together, a little spark was formed directly in the universe. It's like dropping a drop of water into the sea, and it won't be able to turn up too many waves. The entire Skrull spaceship exploded directly. But even a small escape pod flew out. Of course Ron wouldn't let these guys go. Fly up very simply and rudely, and then solve them all with one punch. I don't know how long it took, the entire Skrull spaceship is left with only a few fragments and some stumps in the universe, and will drift out unconsciously with this universe. Ron was sure that there were no living things around him. Skrulls, kill, turn around and fly back to Earth. It didn't even take that long, faster than the Millennium Falcon. The speed of the Millennium Falcon after transformation is already extremely fast, and it can easily fly faster than the speed of light and escape. But that's still not as fast as Ron's. I have to say that this is indeed something that Super God can only get after signing in and achieving the first time. Neither the Fountain of Youth nor the Gate of Dimensions compare to the Superman template. Although the Ron of at the moment is not invincible, there is no problem in walking sideways in the universe. Well, it is worthy of being the son of DC. Flying back to Earth, Ron still landed on the polar bear quietly. Then, he got a message. The polar bears want the Leviathan to use the Winter Warrior to help them get the better of the situation. At the moment can be regarded as the Cold War period on the Earth, and the situation has become more and more difficult. So, the polar bear began to put pressure on Leviathan. It was originally my own organization, but now I want to leave, I think too much. However, just after they applied pressure, Leviathan disappeared in an instant. Ron didn't care about this, he went to see these Winter Warriors with Supergiant. Among the countless frozen devices, I saw a distinct guy. He lost an arm, but his strong body was still chosen by Leviathan. James Buchanan Barnes, the United States Captain Steve's good friend Bucky. At the end of 1944, Bucky fell into the abyss of the iceberg during the operation against Hydra. Then, luckily, Bucky didn't die in the iceberg. When Leviathan found him, although he fell in the snow, he was at least alive, but lost his left arm. I have to say, Bucky is really tough. And he was favored by Leviathan, making him Winter Warrior. There are many Winter Warriors, and besides Bucky, there are more than 10 or so. Leviathan began to brainwash the Winter Warriors and control their minds, letting them do tasks when needed. When you don't need it, just freeze it as it is now. Now there are better options. Ron had them wake Bucky straight up. Leviathan has something called the Infinity Formula, which allows Bucky to survive to modern times because of it. Otherwise, an old guy from the same period as the Captain of the United States, he didn't get super soldier serum like Steve. Even if frozen, it would be impossible for him to live so long without getting old. They started using the Russian term, to jog Bucky's memory, to keep him under control. Ron watched from the sidelines, and then told them to dismiss them straight away. Why? Leviathan's scientists were a little confused. Let you do it. Dottie took a look and said coldly. Yes, they didn't dare to say much, they could only act according to the order. Soon, Bucky's brainwashing control was released, his eyes were blank, and then he began to slowly gather together. He stood up from the stool and wanted to hit someone, but found that he had no left arm. The mechanical arm has not been installed on him yet. Stop. Supergiant stood up straight away, controlling Bucky with a single thought. Ron wasn't disappointed. After all, Bucky is only from common, and the gap with Supergiant is already big. This is why he is not interested in these organizations on Earth. No matter what, it's just a small fight. Essentially the gap is too great. It's useless to dominate the Earth, and maybe Odin would like to hear about it. Just like Hela didn't stay on the Earth after coming out. Like Hela, he only targets Asgard. Give him a false memory. Ron thought about it and said to Supergiant. That's easy with Supergiant's ability. After mastering and developing her ability, she can easily steal other people's memories and then tamper with them. It's so easy to control others. Definitely, Ron didn't completely turn Bucky into a controlled machine either. That would be so boring. Ron is going to have a good game on Earth. Bucky had a dream that when he was young, he joined an organization called Leviathan. And he quickly climbed to the position of security captain by using his ability. What kind of job is this? He is not very clear, but he knows that his status is very high. He then joined the military with his buddy Steve Rogers, but that was just the organization's plan. Steve became the captain of the United States, and he joined the Howling Commandos, always for organization. As for the organization's plans, naturally becoming Steve's best friend and gaining his unquestioning trust. It wasn't until he finally fell into the abyss that Bucky returned to the embrace of the organization. At this moment, Bucky woke up from the dream. The two memories were intertwined, making him dizzy for a while. For a moment, he couldn't tell the priority. It wasn't until he saw Leviathan's logo that he really made the distinction. In fact, there is no difference between him and before, just a memory, and he naturally agrees with Leviathan in his heart. This is the perfect solution. He won't have self-doubt, because it feels like he has experienced it himself. Supergiant said in a nonchalant voice beside Ron. This made Dottie feel a little chilled. She wondered if her memory had also been tampered with inadvertently. Dottie's self-doubt was ignored. Ron nodded. Good job. Supergiant immediately showed a delighted smile. Ron thought while squeezing his chin. What happens when Winter Soldier Bucky, who thinks he's a Leviathan, meets Steve, the United States captain? Captain Barnes, you're finally awake. At this time, there was a conversation inside, which was arranged long ago, and the best actors in Leviathan were invited. I just remember falling off an ice cliff. The organization found you, and it's all right now. What time is it? Quote. Seeing that Bucky looked normal, without any doubts, Ron also felt that this ability was amazing. However, the consumption of Supergiant is also very large. After returning to the room, Supergiant's face suddenly turned pale. She was just holding on outside. Knowing that she has blue skin, even Ron at the moment could notice that her face turned pale. The consumption is indeed quite large. Have a good rest. Ron carried her princess to bed. Supergiant looked at Ron, gripping him tightly, not letting him go. Don't worry, I won't go. Ron laughed. Only then did Supergiant smile, and then began to slowly recover his mental strength. Stealing memories is very easy for her. But it is a bit difficult to forcefully add a memory that does not belong to the other party, and it must also appear very real and not make mistakes back and forth. This is why Supergiant is more inclined to directly control the other party rather than waste effort to construct memory. Time passed quietly. Ma-Well, who fell into the earth, was renamed Dr. Lawson, and easily joined the MI Army Air Force, and then carried out the Pegasus project with S.H.I.E.L.D. So, she was able to study Tesseract. She didn't know what it was, but she knew that it contained huge amounts of energy. Then, she began to research and build the light-speed engine privately, and she succeeded. At this time, there was another teammate beside her, and her name was Carol Danvers. Carol's childhood dream was to fly, and at the moment her dream came true, she successfully joined the Air Force, and has excellent control skills. Not surprisingly, she will be the Captain Marvel of this universe. What surprised Ron was that Carol was not an ant. She didn't match the image of the surprised mom in Ron's memory at all. Although she also had blonde hair, she had an all face and a strong figure. Unlike the original anti-surprise who is not as good as Spider-Man. At the same time, the Zeberg planet is located somewhere in the universe, and there are no other galaxies around it. However, the climate of the planet is suitable, and it is green as far as the eye can see. It is also rich in water elements, but it does not occupy 70% of the Earth like the Earth, which is very suitable for human survival. The human race here is called Z-Huberi. Like the Skrulls, they all have the same skin color. Green skin. In the universe, the most common skin tones are blue, green and normal skin tones. Others such as red and gold are also available, but they are rare. Definitely, the only thing Z-Huberi and Skrull have in common is their skin color. The others have absolutely nothing in common. They are weak and do not have the copying ability of the Skrulls, so they are often bullied. At the moment, all the Z-Huberi people came out of their hiding places, and then lined up like prisoners and walked to the open area. Poor Z-Huberi people, they are being targeted by the notorious Dark Sect in this universe. The Dark Sect that is causing massacres everywhere in the universe is precisely to promote the plan of the director of the Family Planning Office. The population of this universe is too much, so it needs to be reduced by half. As a result, at least half of the Z-Huberi people had to be killed. This is the idea of Purple Sweet Potato Essence's extremely simple cosmic balance. He believes that too many lives have brought too much pressure to the universe, and only by reducing half of the lives can the universe be better. It sounds like it makes a little sense. But it's totally fallacious, just the self-thought of a lunatic. But after hearing this theory, Z-Huberi people couldn't refute and resist at all. Because, this is a powerful lunatic. The Zehuberg people have been convinced and can only face this situation helplessly. Thanos is also relatively smart. The Dark Order is notorious in the universe, but it has never been wiped out. The fundamental reason is that he is obedient to the strong, and punches hard when facing the weak. He specializes in bullying weaklings like Zehuberg. Like that kind of tyrannical race in the universe, he didn't even dare to move. Therefore, he believes that half of the life in the universe should be eliminated fairly. At the moment, what he destroys are only weak races. When he realized that his strength was not enough, and the universe was too big, he's ready to find infinite gems. Once collected, infinite gems can serve any purpose. Thanos watched with a deadpan expression as the Zehuberg were slaughtered one by one, and only half of them were really killed. But this has brought even greater sorrow to the Zehuberg people. Seeing half of the tribe being slaughtered in front of your eyes will only bring hatred to this universe. But Thanos doesn't understand. He saw a little girl. A pretty little girl with black hair, her green skin is so pretty. Then, Thanos knelt down and patted her on the head. "Cute baby, what's your name?" The little girl looked at him crisply, feeling a little sad in her heart, but at her age she didn't fully understand why. "Card, Gamora." Gamora's voice was small, but Thanos caught it. "Good name, you come with me." Involuntarily, Thanos grabbed her little hand directly, which meant she survived. "How old are you?" 3 years old. Gamora doesn't know what's going on now, but still feels that Thanos is scary. But her parents looked at her reluctantly, making the young Gamora complicated and ignorant. Gamora soon saw her parents beheaded by the executioners of the Dark Order. No, unable to accept it, Gamora burst into tears. She finally knew what the feeling in her heart was, and it was fear. Don't cry, death is their destination, this is the normal operation of the universe. There are too many beings in this universe, you should help me, let them be redeemed, and restore balance to this universe. Thanos tries to convince Gamora with his theory. But Gamora doesn't understand this at all. She only knows those feelings that arise from the bottom of her heart, which are called hatred. Gamora was still crying loudly. But Thanos didn't show any impatience, and instead comforted her with a gentle voice. This scene was particularly abrupt in this bloody slaughterhouse. Thanos seems to have two sides. For his own ideals, he is extremely cruel and can give up everything. Soon, Gamora was tired and stopped crying. And Thanos is still determined to take her by his side. He is not at all afraid of Gamora's hatred. Strong self-confidence makes him think that even if Gamora hates him, it's no big deal. Because her race and ability limit her, she will never be able to have more strength than herself. Thanos thought so, and then thought himself a kind smile. "Gamora, I'll find you a sister." Gamora looked at him with hatred in his eyes, but didn't answer. Soon, Thanos did what he said, found many sisters for her, and taught them how to become stronger, and taught them fighting skills and ability. One of them has a good relationship with Gamora, her name is Nebula. But the sad thing is that Nebula, who is defeated by Gamora every time, will be ruthlessly transformed by the cruel Thanos. When Gamora saw this, her hatred for Thanos deepened. She will never forget the scene of the massacre of the Dark Order that day. But Nebula gradually hated Gamora, thinking that Gamora framed him for everything now. What happens in this universe is too far away for the Earth. At the moment on Earth is not peaceful at all. The first generation of Ant-Man appeared early, and was very active in helping S.H.I.E.L.D. At the same time, Yondu, a star hunter, came to Earth and took away a child named Quill. Definitely, the most important thing is that a Bifrost fell from the sky. Sif with a cold expression came out from inside. "How did you come?" The moment Bifrost turned on, Ron rushed over. When the cold Sif saw Ron, he immediately burst into a smile. "Teacher." Sif gave Ron a big hug. "I haven't seen the teacher for a long time, and I want to see it." This also means that Sif has no mission. After all, Odin doesn't take Earth very seriously. Seeing that Ron came to this wild place, he didn't care too much. But not caring is fake. When Sif followed Ron into Leviathan's hidden base, she smiled and looked around. Ron knew she had something to say, so he asked Dottie and others to go down. Dottie looked at the two respectfully, nodded solemnly and left. She could see clearly that scene just now. A beam of light descended from the sky, and then a figure appeared out of thin air. Definitely, there is also a pattern on the ground that she can't understand, which is quite unpredictable. So Dottie knew that the S.H.I.E.L.D in front of him was also a god. Anything to say? Ron asked S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D took a sip of coffee, pursed his lips and said, Earth still drinks this kind of thing, it has long been abandoned in Asgard. Asgard is a bunch of drunkards, it's no wonder they drink such bitter stuff. Then drink vodka. Ron took out the polar bear specialty, and S.H.I.E.L.D took another sip and felt that it was just so-so. Vodka is a good thing for polar bear people, it can warm up the body. But S.H.I.E.L.D, who is in Asgard, feels nothing after drinking it. If you drink this stuff, I'm afraid you won't get drunk for a day and a night. However, it is barely considered wine. Teacher. Afterwards, S.H.I.E.L.D looked at Ron seriously and said, Oh, the God King wants to pass the throne to Thor. S.H.I.E.L.D almost imitated Ron and blurted out Odin. But after all, when she followed Ron, her worldview had already been established, so she couldn't restrain herself like Supergiant. Definitely, it's also something Supergiant doesn't have any sense of identity with. In such a hurry? Ron asked. Not long after he left, Odin inherited the throne. Yes, S.H.I.E.L.D smiled and said, but it's not that simple. My parents said that Asgard wants to inherit the throne, and it will take a lot of time to prepare. Ron nodded, which was normal. Although Asgard looks advanced, some things are still very retro. Things like etiquette. It is impossible to pass on the position of God King casually. In the original timeline, when Odin inherited the throne, he gave it to Thor before he died, so it can be seen. At the beginning, he said that he would give him the throne, but he didn't give it until he died. Therefore, he wants to hand over the throne casually, even if it is the Prince of Asgard. As long as the people of Asgard don't agree, it's not that simple. So Odin is giving Thor a run for his money? Ron asked then. Yes. S.H.I.E.L.D looked at Ron with admiration. Now the Valkyrie Legion will no longer go out to fight casually. No matter where there is a rebellion, Thor will take his followers to solve it. Hearing S.H.I.E.L.D's words, Ron also smiled slightly. Sure enough, it is a routine for the whole world to inherit the throne. Without enough merit, who would identify with Thor? The reason why everyone obeys Odin is because Odin has good results. The Nine Realms War has the best persuasive power. Odin didn't bother you, did he? Ron then asked concerned. He didn't want Brunhild and S.H.I.E.L.D to have a bad time after he left. No, we have nothing, very comfortable. S.H.I.E.L.D said lightly. But still a little reconciled. Before, she could fight everywhere with the Valkyrie army. But now it is marginalized by Odin. The same is true for Brunhild, the famous Valkyrie, which is not reused. But they don't blame Ron, but miss him very much. That's good. We'll be back. Ron nodded, and Supergiant added. S.H.I.E.L.D nodded, looking worried but didn't say anything. Something is always going to happen. Stay a few more days before leaving. Ron saw that S.H.I.E.L.D wanted to leave, and then asked to stay. I thought about it too, but I can't help it, I came out without telling others. If it wasn't Heimdall who guarded Bifrost, there's nothing I can do about it. S.H.I.E.L.D said helplessly. It can be seen that although no one is looking for trouble, there is still a lot of surveillance on them. If Heimdall wasn't her big brother, he wouldn't tolerate her either. Okay then, I'll see you off. Ron held out his hand, and S.H.I.E.L.D took his. All the way to the snow-white clearing, S.H.I.E.L.D gave Ron a reluctant look. This farewell, I don't know how long it will take to see each other again. Although time is nothing to the people of Asgard. But there is no shortage of inner loneliness. Heimdall. S.H.I.E.L.D yelled, and then Bifrost activated and took S.H.I.E.L.D back. Heimdall has the power to turn Bifrost on and off at will. Definitely, it cannot be turned on for too long. Otherwise Odin will stop him. Because opening Bifrost for a long time is to destroy a world. This is something Odin cannot tolerate. When he conquered the Nine Realms, he never thought of doing this, and it is even more impossible now. S.H.I.E.L.D comes and goes quickly. But there's some important news for Ron. I just don't know when Odin is going to pass the throne to Thor. But for sure, the Frost Titan will interrupt Odin's arrangement. This is where Odin himself is going to take the blame. His own protagonist-like approach, defeating the Frost Titan King Lof repeatedly but not killing him, eventually led to the failure of his plan. If it was Ron, he would definitely kill Lof directly, without giving him any chance to revenge himself. Everyone knows how much King Lof hates Asgard, but Odin just doesn't care. Even if he was blinded by Lof in one eye, he didn't kill Lof. I don't know who gave him the confidence. Therefore, Odin's approach is always puzzling. I just want to protect my own territory, and make big and small things small. Asgard, Heimdall glanced at Sif, and told Sif to leave quickly. Sif nodded, and went to find Brunhild. Heimdall sighed, watching Juwan silently. It is worth mentioning that the political correctness prevailing in the Beacon country does not work in Asgard. So Brunhild is white, Heimdall is white. In fact, Ron has never seen black people in Asgard, and the Aesir Protoss has no black blood. After all, Sif and Heimdall are brothers and sisters, and no one in the movie knows how this black and white was born. This can be regarded as one of the few places that Ron finds that is different from the movie universe in memory. There is not much difference in other places. In 1989. Air Base. After this mission is completed, I will take you to my space station, said Dr. Lawson to Carol Danvers. She had said that to Carol more than once. Carol definitely knew it, although she didn't believe it, she was still very curious. I am looking forward, because the Skrulls were all wiped out by Ron. So Malwell, the Holy Mother, has no chance to save the Skrulls who are hostile to the Kree. Definitely, she still decided to rebel. Because she thinks that the Kree are the evil side and the Skrull are weak and deserve sympathy. So she built the Lightspeed engine herself, but didn't give it to the Kree Empire. And also hid the space station. Definitely, she didn't steal the Tesseract this time either. She would have stolen the Tesseract, only to be retrieved by S.H.I.E.L.D. During a chat and joke, the two piloted the plane to take off. This is a fighter jet of the Air Force, and the two flew towards the direction of the mission. It stands to reason that this was another unremarkable day. But it's no wonder that flag was set before Dr. Lawson. So, soon a small carry warship appeared on the Earth, and it directly caught up. As a Kree, Marvell naturally recognized Zahn's model. With his face changing wildly, he took Carol directly to the direction of the space station. And 560 directly told Carol where the space station is. Unfortunately, the technical gap is huge amounts of. It didn't take long for the fighter jets of the two to be hit, and then directly hit the island. There is no one here, and the signal was blocked by the carry warship, so no one knew what happened. Didn't even know a fighter jet disappeared. It may be a few days before the reaction comes. Dr. Lawson. The forced landing made Carol a little dizzy and weak, but he still climbed out of it to see Dr. Lawson. Her name isn't Dr. Lawson, she's Marvel. A man in a strange uniform approached, making Carol very wary. She pointed her pistol at him. What did you say? Who are you? Get closer and shoot me. My name is Yang Rog, she is from us, not from Earth. No, I don't believe it. Carol yelled frantically, and the fighter jet exploded with a bang. Call out. A powerful beam of energy poured directly into Carol's body, who was standing in front of him. This is the Lightspeed engine researched by Marvell, which uses the power of Tesseract. Therefore, the source of Captain Marvel's power is equivalent to that provided by the seller of the universe. But not quite. In short, the powerful explosion caused Carol to lose consciousness directly, and saw the color of his blood change in a trance. Jan Rog smiled smugly, and was about to take Carol away. He approached with a serious expression, and he could clearly know that there was a powerful force in Carol's body. It's really unbelievable. Kree, are you allowed to approach the Earth? Just when Yang Rog was about to leave, a voice rang in his ear. He turned his head and saw a person suddenly appeared beside him. On this backward planet, someone can actually find me. Yang Rog's pupils shrank. Who are you? He asked cautiously, and then pressed a button with his hands behind his back. He is asking for help. As a commander of the Kree Star Forces, and also a colonel, there are still people under his command. The one who killed you. As Ron said, he directly punched him with his fist. I have already called someone. If you kill me, the fleet of the Kree Empire will come and destroy this. In Jan Rog's eyes, Ron's fist was slow, but he couldn't dodge it no matter what. And before he finished speaking, he was punched in the head by Ron. The blood sprayed directly on the face of Carol next to him. The warmth almost woke her up. What I'm afraid of is that you don't call people. Ron said something casually to the headless corpse. Then he looked at the fainted Carol and squatted down directly. You have a lot of capital at a young age. Chaff, Ron said, and began to use mana to help her adjust the chaotic energy in her body. Don't forget that he is a master of both magic and martial arts. Carol wasn't able to fully grasp the energy in her body from the start. Get familiar with it slowly. Later, the Kree suppressed the energy in her body because they were afraid that she would not be able to control it. Definitely, it is also afraid that she will regain her memory. But now, with Ron's help, Carol's breathing went from fast to steady. Then slowly opened his eyes. The memories that should have been lost flooded into her mind. After a little humming, she got used to it. She was about to get up from the ground, and then saw a headless corpse, and her whole body was still glowing. This is because she couldn't control the energy in her body, so that it overflowed. Sense the energy in your body with your heart. Ron, who already regarded her as his subordinate, reminded. Who are you? Carol looked at Ron. Ron, are you with him? Your Dr. Lawson is with him. No, Carol screamed and turned around. Seeing that even the wreckage of the plane was burned to blacks, she almost cried. Interesting, she is an alien spy, but you believe her so much. Ron said casually. Impossible. Carol naturally did not believe it. Look at their blood. She is an alien spy, working for the Kree Empire. You were deceived by her. Ron continued to beat her faith. For Carol, Dr. Lawson was someone who shared her beliefs. No one has dated her since she was a child, because her dream turned out to be a flight member. In the whole space, only Dr. Lawson was like her. Naturally became a confidant. So she roared, "Shut up. You have to accept the facts." I said shut up. Carol said, and hit Ron directly. Her energy is completely overflowing, making her look like Tiga, radiating light from her body. Then, the extremely fast flight arrived in front of Ron in an instant. Hitting Ron on the shoulder. She wasn't bad at all, she just wanted Ron to stop talking. Unexpectedly, when she punched him, Ron remained motionless, and there was a metallic sound coming from his body. But Carol himself felt that his hand was going to be broken, and his face was red. This made Carol look at Ron in surprise. She herself was surprised by the changes in her body, but she couldn't impress Ron. This is false. In addition, Ron was taller than her, and at the moment looked down at her with irresistible majesty, which made Carol feel inferior to Ron. Anger wells up in my heart. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.